So today I wanted to share a somewhat concerning DM I received on Instagram a few weeks ago from one of my subscribers. And no, the title on today's video is not clickbait because this subject definitely does relate to me as well. And there's a very good chance that it relates to you also. So it says, "Hey Sean, not sure if you'll see this, but I'm currently struggling a lot with body dysmorphia. I've been lifting for 3 years and gained a good 20 pounds of mass. My DEXA scan shows 11% body fat and I have a visible six-pack, but I still truly feel that I look like shit. I really believe fitness social media is to blame. I can see it affecting my lifting partners too. We're always comparing ourselves to online influencers and it's hard to deal with. Any advice?" So here's the reality, and not a lot of people want to talk about this, but I would say that the vast majority of people, if not all people, who get involved in bodybuilding / fitness for aesthetic purposes because they want to look a certain way, and who spend any reasonable amount of time online looking at fitness content, almost everyone deals with this to some degree, even if they're not consciously aware of it. Now, quick disclaimer here, I'm not some kind of expert when it comes to body image disorders, and if you're having a serious struggle with this to the point where it's significantly affecting your day-to-day life, then I would strongly advise that you see a professional about it who specializes in that area. You know, if your shoulder was hurt, you would get professional help for that. If you had an infection and your throat was hurting, you would get help for that. So if your brain is hurting, that is a physical part of your body as well, and there is zero shame in getting help for that also. Now, that said, when it comes to more moderate cases of this, so, you know, the average gym bro out there who's trying to achieve a lean and muscular body, or who already has achieved a lean and muscular body but still feels inadequate because of all the other physiques that they're seeing online, in that case, there definitely is some advice that I want to share with you here to kind of bring you back down to reality so that you can view this whole fitness thing in a more accurate light and just feel better about it in general. I've been training for 20 years at this point. I've interacted with countless thousands of people over that time. I've dealt with this myself to a certain degree, so I do have some pretty good insight into the subject, and if you watch this video through and apply the tips that I'll be discussing, I'm very confident that it will make a positive difference for you moving forward. So, the challenge with fitness social media, or just social media in general, is this. And some of this might sound a bit out there, but stick with me because it is highly relevant. So human beings, we are highly social creatures and we're naturally hardwired to always be comparing ourselves to the other people around us. And that's because throughout evolutionary history, that was an extremely important thing to do so that you understood what was going on in the probably 100-person or so tribe that you were living in. The drive to want to fit in with the group, the drive to want to climb up the social hierarchy, that is completely and absolutely normal because throughout history, it was a matter of life and death. You didn't survive without the group, and you didn't reproduce if you weren't accepted by the group. And you are the descendant of all the people who successfully reproduced, going all the way back to the first humans on Earth and even further than that. And so you carry their genetic programming. Anyone who says that they don't care what other people think is completely full of shit, okay? Truly not caring what other people think, that's called being a sociopath. That is a psychological dysfunction. Now, yeah, some people care more, other people care less, and you can definitely train yourself to care less to a certain degree if it's something that's causing you stress, but no matter what, everyone cares what other people think about them, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's absolutely natural, and it's how your brain is wired from the get-go. But the big challenge is this. Biologically, the human brain hasn't really changed in probably the last 100,000 years or so because biological evolution is a very slow-moving process. However, the environment that we live in has dramatically changed from what it was throughout probably 99.99999% of our evolutionary history, especially in the past 200 years or so, and even to a huge degree in the last 10 years or so with the huge spread of the internet and the spread of social media. And those changes can make things really tough on this kind of ancient hardwire because it's not yet optimized for this environment. Instead of living our lives in the real physical world surrounded by a tight-knit tribal community like we've done for countless thousands of years, now we still live in the real world, but in way bigger cities with massive populations, which is not normal on its own. And we're also spending more and more time in this online digital world, which is inhabited by, at this point, about 60% of the entire world population, or around 4.5 billion people. And the big kicker is that within those billions of people, the ones who receive the most attention online, the ones whose content you're most likely to be exposed to, is naturally going to be the most extraordinary and the most exceptional of absolutely everything that's out there. And that's exactly where the fitness industry can become a real problem for some people. You know, the habits of Consistent proper training and healthy nutrition, those are meant to build self-confidence and to improve how you feel about yourself. But if you allow yourself to get too deeply wrapped up in it, if you're spending, hours and hours on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok scrolling through this endless content, then it can actually start to have the opposite effect, since you're disproportionately being shown a tiny select group of individuals on the very, very extreme end of the bell curve. The 0.00001% in terms of physique, strength, looks, athletic ability, and everything else. And I'm gonna give you some really important tips for how to deal with this in a second here, so keep on watching. But the fact is, even if you're not consciously aware of it, when you're consistently taking in this endless imagery of the absolute most aesthetic, most muscular, shredded physiques in the world, it gradually rewires your perception to where you start thinking that's the norm, that these are the people within your social circle that you need to be comparing yourself to and living up to in order to fit in. And naturally, that's gonna set you up for some potentially serious problems, because in reality, not on social media, in the real everyday world, the vast overwhelming majority of the population actually exist somewhere around the middle section of the bell curve, ranging from a bit below average to a bit above average. And only a tiny fraction exist on that very far end. So now you've gone ahead and created this massive expectation gap between where you are and where all of these elite individuals are. And the bigger this zone is, the more unhappy you're naturally gonna be. And because the primary goal of a social media app is to keep you on that app for as long as humanly possible so that they can show you as many ads as possible, the algorithm is gonna take that tiny little subset of extraordinary people and inflate it so that that's mostly what you see. And then conversely, it's gonna take the majority of people out there, the 99% plus of the population, and it's gonna shrink their visibility down and filter them out, basically. So your mind ends up with a totally warped perception of the social world and what your position in it is. And that on its own is challenging enough, but this gets taken to a whole other level beyond that, because even within that tiny subset of elite individuals, their eliteness is being artificially inflated even further. So not only are you generally looking at the best of the best in terms of muscle building and fat loss genetics, but you also have to contend with the enhancing effects of things like filters, fully optimized lighting, pumps, oil, tanning, perfect angles, not to mention that whatever photo or video is being posted was probably the very best one out of a collection of 10, 20, 50, maybe 100 different ones that were taken. Then you factor PEDs into that, which is totally rampant in the industry. Some people are open about their use, but just as many, if not more, either don't say anything or they just blatantly lie about being natural when they're not. And then if that wasn't enough, some people just blatantly alter their physiques using photoshopping apps. You'd be amazed at what these apps can do nowadays and how realistic they are. So what you're looking at on that screen technically isn't even a real person. So all of those factors combined, and it's no wonder whatsoever why scrolling through your Instagram feed is making you feel not so great about yourself and not so proud of your accomplishments. And it's no wonder why this causes so many people to resort to extreme behaviors to try and deal with it, because they just never feel big enough or never feel lean enough. They might end up turning to enhancing substances, cutting to excessively low, unhealthy body fat levels. Various eating disorders can come into play. This stuff is really not that uncommon in what we call the fitness industry. But the key thing you don't realize is this. If you're someone who simply trains in the gym on a consistent basis, you eat a reasonably healthy diet, you have some decent visible muscle definition to where the average person out there would look at you and know that you work out, and you have body fat levels somewhere within the healthy range, so let's say below about 20% for a male and below about 30% for a female, with just those basic things covered, you're gonna be in better shape, physically stronger, and probably healthier than the vast, vast majority of the general population. Those things alone probably put you in, I would say, at least the top 5% fitness-wise, and for many of you, probably top 1 to 2%, but you just don't realize it. And it's pretty damn unfortunate that people can put in the work for months and years on end, yet still feel inferior because they think they're supposed to look like the top 99.99% of people who technically don't even exist, because the way they look online is not how they look in real life anyway. How the hell are you supposed to look like Steve when Steve doesn't even look like Steve? And sometimes Steve doesn't look anything like Steve. You see Steve online and then you see him in real life and it looks like two completely different people. And it's completely understandable why content creators do this, because if they don't optimize their photos and videos, if they don't display the very best version of themselves, then their content is way less likely to be pushed by the algorithm. they won't get visibility, and they're just gonna lose out to the other people who are doing all of this optimization. If I'm posting on my Instagram, you bet your ass I'm gonna show you my best photos from the best angles and the best lighting. Of course, there are certain lines that I won't cross and that I think are legitimately unethical, like being a straight up fake natty or photoshopping your pictures using excessive filters, but fitness content creators really have no choice but to sort of play the game. Otherwise, they're gonna be far less likely to grow their audience. But I try to at least balance it out by sharing videos like this to explain how this stuff really works behind the scenes and to provide solutions for you. Which brings us to the main question here, which is how do you actually deal with all of this? What are some steps that you can follow in order to reprogram your mind into a more realistic outlook and to maximize the enjoyment of your fitness journey and make it a more rewarding experience and something that brings you more confidence and more contentment rather than less? Well, keeping in mind that a certain level of discontentment and dissatisfaction is also just human nature, and that's never going to go away completely no matter what you do, because it's just how your brain is wired. There are some things that you can do to reduce it and to at least keep it at a healthier level. So the first I would say is just basic awareness. A lot of people, especially beginners, they're just not truly aware of all the points we just talked about in terms of just how much online photos and videos are optimized to make someone look much better than they do in real life, that, straight up photoshopping is sometimes involved, the huge role that genetics play, drug use, the fact that the algorithm is mainly set up to show you the absolute best of the best in terms of what's out there. And so just being conscious of these things does go a long way on its own. The whole sort of Instagram versus reality meme is kind of a cliche at this point, but it is very true. What you see online is not representative of the real everyday world. Now, the second thing that I would advise is that if you really feel that fitness social media or even just social media in general is starting to detract from your mental well-being, then crazy idea, but you do have the option to just stop looking at it. Or at least, let's say more realistically, you can look at it a lot less than you currently do. And also you can be very conscious of what you specifically choose to look at. Now, I know that's easier said than done because these apps are literally set up to get you as addicted to them as possible, but you've got to try your best to break that cycle of constantly checking your feed over and over again. Mindlessly scrolling and clicking all over the place. Body dysmorphia aside, that's just not the best thing for your psychological health in general. So one thing I would highly recommend is to do an audit of your following list. So go through and look one by one at all the people you're subscribed to on YouTube, everyone you're following on Instagram or TikTok or wherever else, and ask yourself, is this person legitimately providing value to me, or is looking at their content just a distraction that's actually making me feel worse deep down? Maybe it's overly curated, overly optimized, they're clearly on PEDs, maybe their physique isn't something I aspire to anyway. If it's not providing legitimate value that's making your life better in some direct practical way, then just hit the unfollow button. And if there are certain accounts that you really don't like seeing for whatever reason, you can also just block them and they won't show up at all anymore. The truth is that I personally have a list of several hundred accounts in my Instagram that are just straight up blocked, so I don't have to see them pop up in my recommendations. Not just fitness accounts, but any account that I don't want to see for whatever reason. So just try to focus on subscribing mainly to people who are delivering real educational content or genuine inspiration that directly assists you in your life, rather than just aimlessly following people for those juicy dopamine hits. Another thing I sometimes do is just completely delete the Instagram and YouTube apps for portions of the day. So maybe I do a quick check earlier on, and then I just delete them for the rest of the day and then re-download them later. That way, I'm not tempted to keep checking them all throughout the day. You can also use certain app blockers that restrict your usage. There's YouTube plugins that will prevent the homepage feed and the suggested videos bar from showing up so you're not as distracted by them. And of course, there's also the option to just unplug altogether. But nowadays, I understand that that's probably not realistic for most people, but maybe what you could do is take periodic breaks. So every week or 2 weeks, you just totally disconnect for a period of time. All right, after that, once you've taken some steps to just look at fitness social media less in general, now what you want to do is start directing more of your attention into the real everyday world and start really observing the everyday population. Because this digital fitness world and all these digital fitness people you've absorbed your mind into are not an accurate representation by any stretch of the imagination of the real world that you actually inhabit on a day-to-day basis. And you need to readjust your perception to understand that to the average person who doesn't even exercise regularly, which describes the majority of people, relative to them, you do have a very impressive physique if you've been at this for a consistent period and you've been doing things properly. What we tend to forget is that the bodybuilding industry in general is really just a subculture. It's actually a very, very small slice of the population at large, and relative to the population at large, you're probably already in the top few percentile in terms of muscularity and leanness. Now, the next tip would be to learn to enjoy training and nutrition for the way that it makes you feel rather than just for the way that it changes your outward appearance. Now, there's obviously nothing at all wrong with wanting to look a certain way. You know, this idea that it's all about what's on the inside that counts and it's superficial and shallow to care about your appearance. That's obviously complete bullshit for a wide variety of reasons, but the point is just don't make that your only focus. You know, in my case, for the first few years of training, literally the only purpose I saw for working out was in terms of how many inches of muscle it was going to put onto my body and how much body fat I was or wasn't carrying. But when I started to enjoy working out just for working out itself, because it feels good to be physically active, because of the effect that it had on my mood and my mental well-being, just being grateful for the fact that I have a body and I'm able to train in the first place, I personally found that really helpful. And then beyond that, lastly, you really need to keep in mind that your physique is just one small aspect of who you are as a complete individual. It's easy to get hyper focused on this one area to where you're walking around and all you can see are people's physiques. You know, you're standing in line at Starbucks and comparing your calves to the guy standing in front of you, but ultimately, the amount of muscle tissue and fat mass on your body is just one tiny slice of your entire being. What about your career/finances, your social and dating life, other hobbies and other pursuits that you might have, your character as a person, your intellect, how you conduct yourself in the world, your values, right? There's so much more to life than the roundness of your delts or the prominence of your lower ab veins. Now, having round delts and having prominent lower ab veins is cool and all, but try to start viewing yourself more as a complete package beyond just your appearance, because that's gonna diffuse the focus and help you become less physique obsessed. Now, with everything that we've talked about here today, keep in mind that I'm not saying don't continue pushing for higher and higher fitness goals if you truly want to. I'm not trying to glorify mediocrity, which I'm sure some people might say in the comments. You know, if this is a genuine passion for you and your goal is to be the absolute best you can possibly be in this area, maybe you genuinely do want to be in the top 0.0001%, and fitness social media isn't causing you stress and you just find it motivating, then by all means go for it, okay? Everybody can make their own choice here. But at the end of the day, we do this fitness stuff because we want to feel good, we want to feel confident, we want to feel happy with ourselves. And if you're struggling with body image issues and your metric for success is to look like the fitness influencers in your Instagram feed, I can tell you with absolute certainty that that is a dangerous road to go down and that you are playing a game that you almost certainly cannot win. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all of my future content. Here's 2 more videos you can check out now. Thanks for watching the video, guys, and I will talk to you again soon.